My name is Jill Beal, and I'm the Vice President of Education for Illinois Agri-Women. And I just wanted to thank everyone for joining us this morning and listening to our speaker, Cheryl Mitchell. Cheryl, do you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself? I mean, I could read your
Sure.
bio, but I think you could tell us much better about yourself than me.
Yeah, that's
So,
fine. That's fine.
welcome. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for the invitation, ladies. I am grateful to be here. Cheryl Mitchell. Will they have all my contact information? Will you make sure they have my phone number and email?
Yes, we can
Okay,
add that.
great, great. So I currently am a keynote speaker, coach, host a podcast called Crossing the Line, which is about generations. And I hosted for about a year with a young gentleman in his 20s. So it was a 20-something and a 50-something. Basically, I was telling him how life goes because they're totally clueless, right? They don't have any idea yet, like we didn't. And most recently, I have been part of my business that has been growing is working with farm families with their legacy and succession planning. And I'll talk about that in part of this. And so my background, very quickly, I was a teacher, all different grades, all different levels, several locations. And a few years ago, I just decided that I am going to take the leap of faith and I'm going to go into business for myself and absolutely love it. So I have the privilege of working with, I was telling the ladies who were first on, I was in Nebraska for about 6 days, and the youngest there was age 2. Now, they were not at my session, but the youngest at the session was 5, up to age 24. And so I love what I do because I'm still teaching in a way, and I'm impacting people, particularly women, and in the field of agriculture, which is my absolute love. I grew up on a dairy farm in Newton, Illinois, in Jasper County. My parents still farm, although my dad is 84, my mom is 79, and my dad's having some health challenges, so we're in that transition piece ourselves. So I come from the world of ag. I lived in Illinois for a very long time up until last November, and then moved to Lexington, Kentucky. My oldest son lives in Richmond. He's a fireman here in Lexington. And he asked me, he and his wife said, "Mom, you should move to Lexington." And I said, "Do you want me there?" Like, really? And they're like, "Well, not next door." I'm like, "Well, I don't want to be next door to you either. So we're good." So I live about 30 minutes from them, and I'm meeting lots of new people. It's really been a blessing. So come to life at age 56 going, you learn a lot along the way, and then sometimes you just take the leap of faith, and it's been very beneficial. So, want me to keep going? So here's what the topic is generations. Now, first of all, I want this to be way more interactive than me talking to you. So kind of, who has heard me before in different arenas, or has, okay. Oh, Emily, I was like, your hair's in a ponytail. I'm like, man, she looks familiar. And then I see the thing. Okay. So Emily knows me. So who else has seen me or heard me? Okay. Leah has heard. Great. Great. So what I kind of want to combine two topics, but I want you to put things in the chat. I want this to be an open discussion. I do a lot of speaking around generations, and this came about when I was at a meeting 2 years ago, almost 3 now, and I was in Champaign at this agribusiness alliance, kind of this group that people put together because I was on the Champaign County Farm Bureau Foundation Board for 6 years. And we were sitting at the University of Illinois, and they were talking about all this research, this really, really cool research about growing plants in air. Okay, now I'm a dairy farmer's daughter, and we grew all the plants in the dirt. So this was a whole different concept for me. I'm like, is it possible? And then they were talking about mapping the snout of a pig, like fingerprints or whatever. And I'm thinking, I mean, I was kind of a smart ass, and I said, okay, so is it gonna open its iPhone? Like, what is the point of this? And so it was this high level, incredible conversation the researcher, I mean, it was just, the energy in the room was amazing for 45 minutes. Then we had the opportunity to go around and say where we worked, what our business, and some of the challenges. Well, the gentleman to my whatever direction, right? He started in and said, I'm so-and-so with this company, and then he started complaining. And for 10 minutes, he went on about how awful this generation, they can't get him to work, they can't, all the things. And I felt the air in the room just deplete. And something happened in me that I got really mad, because I thought, you just blew it. You just had this opportunity where great minds are thinking, we're collaborating, we've got energy, and you just took a complaining session and dumped it on everybody. So I left there and I thought to myself, okay, I have to do something about this, because all the things that he said are true in some respect, like they don't know how to work hard. Well, they don't see after a while, I'll have fireworks that go off too in my little screen. I haven't figured it out yet. Probably the Gen Z could help me on that. So, we have this, they don't know how to work hard like we do. Well, I grew up on a dairy farm, so nobody knows how to work as hard as I do. I mean, so if we're comparing, right? Then I thought, okay, they don't know how to communicate like we do. So the things that he was saying were true, but they were an obstacle to, and it just became this heavy blanket. So I started researching and learning, and I've read several books, which I'm happy to pass along to folks about, okay, who are these young people and why are we so frustrated with them? Well, they're a very different generation than anything else. There are 5 generations in the workplace, and the older people who are, 78 years and older, they have a different perspective. They have a different worldview. So when I started researching and doing this, I found myself curious instead of judgmental. Now, that is not to say that they don't have their problems, because they are very frustrating and they don't work like we did and we don't know what to do with them. All of those things are true. And at the same time, they're not going away. So I wanted to bring to the conversation, what do we do? How do we bridge that gap? How do we look at what they bring to the table and what we bring to the table as the older generation, and look at the strengths and leverage those together? It has been really, it's been joyful. I've been able to challenge people, because sometimes people just want to be mad about it. Like they just want it to be a problem, because it might mean that they have to change. And that is very true. The other thing is, we don't want to take responsibility for the fact that we did this to them. They did not get this way. They did not get soft. We started this 30 years ago when we put helmets on everybody. Okay, I grew up on a farm. We didn't have 4-wheelers. We had 3-wheelers. And the time that I flipped it in the culvert, I did not sit for 2 weeks in school. I took a pillow because I probably broke my tailbone. So we've done this with unintended consequences. So what do we do about that? So this generational thing is, to me, is I'm fascinated by the conversations, and I'm fascinated by the fact that the kids want to hear from us. They're afraid of us. They don't know how to approach us because they don't have those skills. So this generation thing is, when I approach it with curiosity versus judgment, it has opened an entirely new perspective to me. And yes, I get frustrated. And then I think, but they don't know. Like, think about when you were 18 years old. I mean, you didn't know. And you did some pretty stupid stuff. Today, you're arrested or you are recorded, so you can't do stupid stuff. I mean, there were many nights that we drove on back roads in Jasper County late, and there was no curfew. If you think about those things, we're comparing what we know and assuming they know all of that. They don't know. And us older generation, we're a little stubborn, especially the older people. And I have a dad who's like that. And they want us to know all the things, right? And so it's what I find is it's just this miscommunication. It's like we're speaking two different languages. So as I've gone through the speaking to different organizations and breaking through some of those preconceived notions or stereotypes, or I'm just going to be mad about this and complain and keep everybody complaining with me instead of problem solving. The other topic or the other piece of this is they really need us to coach them. They really need us to walk alongside them and not continually tell them what to do, but walk alongside as this mentor, because they're fragile enough, again, because we've set this up. I'll give you an example. I was in Nebraska this last week with the Hereford Association, and their staff of 3, 5 or whatever, and they have some interns in the summer. And one of the gals, sweet gal, and she was overwhelmed. And I said to her, okay, Denver, how are you? She said, oh, I'm fine. And I looked at her and I said, no, really, how are you? And the tears just started. And I said, okay. She said, I'm just overwhelmed, like trying to manage personality and on all the things and the schedule. And she goes, and I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I said, okay. She said, well, like nobody's telling me that. And she goes, and I'm the kind of person that I got to know if I'm doing a good job because, well, why? Because we've told them all along, good job, good job, good job. You know, they need that constant. So she didn't have that. So she assumed. So we talked through that. And afterwards she just said, oh, okay. I feel better because I got to say these things. So it's the approach that we take and walking alongside them as a mentor. The coaching piece is a little bit more structured, if you will. I say that to a lot of people that sometimes they need an outside person from the company that you work for, because then you're sort of like, you're the boss. And so if you have this objective that they can walk through scenarios and we can, role play, what does that look like? Really just letting them sometimes just say it all out and then provide some strategies. So I'm energized by the youth. As I sat in the airports and things yesterday and sat in this arena in Grand Island, Nebraska, these young kids, I think ag is a little different. I think we do things a little bit differently. But I just kept thinking how you look at it and the lens that you look through matters for absolutely everything. So instead of being annoyed, can we shift that and say, I wonder why they're behaving that way? And even ask those questions. Help me understand how you got there. And watching and listening to the older generation, they want to provide all their experience and their knowledge that they have. They've collected all this. They don't know what to do with it. It's like a library that goes, please just read the books. So I'd love to hear your questions. I'd love to hear maybe there's a situation. What are you encountering in where you work, or even your family, maybe your kids or grandkids or nieces and nephews that you're like, I don't even know what to do with them. I would love to hear some of your thoughts and questions.
Good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
You speaking is just redrawing the picture for me, having watched my father-in-law and my husband were farmers, and my husband was born when his dad was in his late 30s. And so, and he passed away at the age of 84, about 7-8 years ago. But he, even being, from that older generation growing up post-depression, And with the vast change of farming technology, it really is sweet because he let Joe, my husband, make mistakes. He let him make mistakes and learn from them. And I really feel like the passing along was a good mentorship for my husband. And, even though, we may want to do it a little differently, we have our daughter and son-in-law coming behind us. But it's really sweet when you were kind of talking about that older guy, younger guy thing, I just thought, gosh, how lucky Joe was to have a dad who they really worked well together. It was really a mentorship. It was tough when it needed to be, but he let him make mistakes and learn. So it was really...
Natalie, thank you, because that is very unique and rare. I think I have a farm family that I'm working with now, and the dad and the two sons. And I said to the boys, because they're partners thirds. And I said, do you feel like you work for your dad? Oh, no. Kind of. And I said, but you do. Well, yeah, because it's his way, but you're thirds, but it's still his way. And so this dad, his heart is there. I mean, he wants his son to take this over, but he doesn't know how to have that mentorship. He's operating as father-son. Joe and his dad, it sounds like your father-in-law allowed him to be this partner that that's beautiful. And I think that also sets your husband up well for you all to transition to the next generation. And you are going to do it differently because you have to. It isn't like it was coming out of the Depression, and we have to do things differently. That's a gift. That's a gift. And I say to families, if that's not happening, have someone who is not attached to any of that talk, because it really is a generational language thing, right? I mean, this is the way we've always done it. You should show up on the farm at 7:30 every day. Well, is there work to do? Well, no, but you should be here. So yes, that's a beautiful gift. Beautiful gift. Yeah. What other questions come to mind, or situations with generations, workplace or home?
So
There was a question in the, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go
There was
ahead.
comments, so go ahead. I'll let you go first.
So Emily Gartner, Farm Credit, Illinois. I have the privilege of sitting in the same room with 6 Gen Zers this summer for our summer internship. And it has been a journey in learning, but listening to your podcast, Cheryl, and reading some of the books and watching a lot of the videos about
Good.
how again, taking the curiosity approach with them. Because I saw the question in the chat too about how can we approach the younger generation in a non-threatening way. And most of the time I'm like, well, how would you like to be coached? What is your preference and what is your style? But I've had to be probably more hands-on and intentional with this particular subset than I have in the past, because they don't know how to do something yet. And so it's asking them questions, helping them figure out, how do I prioritize my schedule? How do I get everything where I can see it and be organized? I did have to have I would say a challenging conversation, probably about week 3, with an individual. And I said, we need you to show up differently. Well, what does that look like? And so coaching her through those steps of, okay, well, let's get organized. Let's get it on your calendar. Let's talk about your priorities. Let's talk about some of the feedback that we've been given, because they do crave that feedback. And so I've been very intentional. If I see something that they're doing well, I pulled one aside yesterday and I said, hey, I just heard you talking on a call with another employee, and this person is working on their communication skills. And I said, you did an excellent job of opening the conversation, allowing them to have that space. And so what I'm finding is it's just a lot more coaching, a lot more, let's walk together on this journey. Kind of the similar example you shared with Denver, Cheryl, but it's like, okay, let's open up. Tell me how you're really feeling. And so I have a structured template I walk through with some of them. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling this week? What are your wins? What are your challenges? How can I best support you? What does that look like? So again, it's walking alongside of them because they don't know it yet, but they're getting there. And it's been so fun to see this group evolve from week 1 to where we are in week 9 as a cohort collectively, and just the growth and development that we've seen given some of those opportunities that we've been able to coach, mentor, and just provide some more feedback for them.
Yeah. Emily, you basically answered Sarah's question in the way that I would. And so 2 examples come to mind. As a teacher, as a former teacher, I remember somebody telling me, if you want a behavior, you have to teach the behavior. I think of these young people as 6-month-old kids, babies. I would not expect a 6-month-old to walk, talk, and have full sentences and eat by themselves. Okay. These young people have not had the work experiences that we used to have when they came to now they have a lot of book knowledge. So see, there we go. I have lovely things that fly out of my picture. I don't understand it. It's for emphasis, but 2 things came to mind. So last fall, so I've worked with the Junior Hereford Association now for a couple of years. And last fall, 5 previous board members texted me individually. Now, these are in the world of achievement. They have college degrees. They have jobs. They are they've been on the boards. They got it all together. Separately, individually, they all texted me and said, hey, I got a question about this or this job or a situation or whatever. And I'm like, time out. So my brain went to, okay, look, you've all texted me. I want to float an idea. Would you all be willing to gather for an in-person young professionals retreat that I lead? Now, for the children who do not respond, but have their phone in their hand all the time, is that not irritating, by the way? Okay. Within less than 5 minutes, all of them said yes, 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 yes. So I gathered them together in Kentucky. They invested to come here from Tennessee, Texas, Illinois, Nebraska, and another one from Illinois. They came and we did some Enneagram work. So some assessment, who are you? How do you work? Communication things. But in the afternoon, I said, okay, tell me what's going on. Like, how do you live life or whatever? Guys, they had absolutely no idea how to structure their life. We did an entire chart paper on, we spent an hour and a half on how you structure your week. Because here was their question. How do you make a doctor's appointment when you're working 40 hours, a 40-hour week job? Like how do you, and in my head, okay, the bell went off that I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? You do not know how to do that. They don't, because everything has been structured for them. They have waited for the person to tell them what to do next. And now they have this job. They've never worked in the workforce like that before. So we did like just a brain dump of, okay, what do you have to accomplish in the week? Because they don't know how to prioritize either, Emily. Like, I mean, because it's all been done for them. So things like, you want to work out, you want to go to a ball game, you want to, you need to make a doctor's appointment, you need to work, you got the drive to and from, when do you work out? If you have 2 of the girls were getting married, I'm like, your guys are going to want to spend time with you and all these things. And the one guy or 2 guys, they go, hey, can we just put up there nothing? I said, yeah. And the girls are like, what do you mean? And they're like, we just want to do nothing. So then I had to have the conversation with the girls to say, hey, do you know that men operate in boxes? Like, they're like, what are you talking about? I said, well, they have a food box, they have a sports box, they have a sex box, they have a work box, and they have a nothing box. They're like, well, what's in the nothing box? And the boys go, nothing. What? How? like every woman goes. And one of the girls who's getting married, she goes, so every time I ask him what he's thinking about, and Noah goes, yeah, he says nothing. He's thinking about nothing. Let him think about nothing. It was awesome. So again, they don't know, right? So I said to them, are you an early morning person? Or are you a late night person? How much sleep do you want to have? And it was fascinating because one of the kids looked at the other one, two others, and said, I thought you had it all together. And she's like, are you kidding? I'm dying inside. So Emily, they don't know. So I say that to you as how can you as an organization offer a resource for that? And I asked the kids, they had to invest a little bit of money. And I asked for feedback. They're like, this was the best thing because it was objective. We played cards and hung out on Saturday night and, had fun. But during the day, I had kind of a structure and it was 48 hours. So it's a way that, because honestly, you as organizations don't necessarily have time to do all of those things, right? So approaching this younger generation in a non-threatening way is literally sitting down with a one-on-one and say, hey, will you meet me for coffee? There are some things that I don't know or understand. I need your input. I want to help you in a better way. So asking some questions, and the research does say that this generation, 84% of them want regular ongoing training, and over 40% of them want to hear from or interact with their direct supervisor multiple times a day. They are a needy bunch. And I say needy just because they've been trained that way. They've been trained that way. So I think it's, okay. Another example for this younger generation, the non-threatening way. So this junior board that I've worked with, they don't respond to their emails. And it just irritates the staff because they're like, we send you all this, we have no idea. So I was in a session with them and I said something. I looked at them like, answer your damn email. Like, and one of the gals goes, so you want us to say, hey, okay, we got it? I'm like, yes. But listen to this. She's like, we've been taught don't do that. Every teacher and every professor says, I don't need another damn email. Don't respond. Don't. So do you see the divide here? They walk into this place where the opposite expectation, and then they get in trouble or feel like they get in trouble when it's hey, how have you been trained about email with school? And like, it's that curiosity to get it out of them, because then you can understand, Sarah, I get rolling, by the way, it's figuring out what they know. How were they trained? Like this email thing, huge eye opener to the staff. That's why they're not responding. It's not because they haven't read it. It's because they were told not to, and they didn't want to bother someone. So now we have to say, oh, okay, that was the rule in so-and-so's class. And somebody goes, ignore all those teachers and professors. They live in a whole bubble of themselves. I was like, I'm not touching that at all. Just respond to the email. So again, very clear expectations. These kids are used to it being laid out. And laid out. So that, the other thing that I would say is you approaching them that you want to learn from them. Hey, I'm struggling with how to post on Instagram. I'm struggling with this piece of technology. Do you have could you help me? Because then that becomes this, you break down these barriers and they don't feel like they're in trouble. Because remember, they're an automatic defensive because of everything we said about them, and yes, so that would be my approach in asking some questions. So what
Cheryl,
else? Yes.
Cheryl, I'll also add to that, like I had to teach them how to use Outlook.
Oh,
and they didn't know some of the functions and features in Outlook because they're so used to a Gmail or something that's not even Outlook. And so that was, one of them had a, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I could put like notes in the Outlook invite, calendar invite. And he's like, game changer. And I was like, yes, this would be super helpful. And so it's really like, we've dedicated our Fridays for interns, and walking through, what does the presentation look like? What we did a session on, like, how do you interact with the different generations in the workplace? So giving them some opportunities on Fridays to practice some of those skills that registered student organizations used to be giving. But as we're thinking about even this population that's coming into the workforce, these kids have lived through COVID. So they've lost a lot of that just normal social interaction, life skills, because they had to do things virtually. So it's almost a relearning, a retraining for them when they get into this space. But yeah,
And remember, they're isolated. We've all of us are more isolated, right? We used to sit out on our front porch. Now we're in the back with a fence. We used to be, I mean, I was in the airport yesterday. Nobody makes eye contact. Everybody's, and so they're used to that. I mean, that's just how they're trained. So thinking through that differently. The other piece of that is, and I will be, Jill, I'd be happy to share this document that I've used with the workforce numbers at Purdue Global, that to share with them. Like when I say to the young people, the worldview of the traditionalists is they want respect, recognition, or obedience over individualism. Like they're like, oh, that explains him. Yeah. So they don't know either. And remember, okay, this is the other thing about like Outlook. We used to have one system, right? Now everybody's got a different system. And so even though they're digitally addicted, they are not necessarily tech savvy. Those are very different things. Very different things. So even not, the other thing is I would assume nothing. I would assume nothing. I also think, and I've offered this, I've actually had a couple people do this with me, is as an onboarding or one of the benefits for 6 months with a new employee is to have them have a person who is not connected to the organization that is their coach, if you will, where you meet with them once a month for an hour, go, okay, tell me how it's going. Because they're walking through some of those things that the companies don't have time to do. Training them for some of the, because somebody said, oh my God, am I supposed to be their mom? Kinda. Well, I don't have time for that. I'm like, well, you kind of don't have time not to in this day and age. So again, us shifting, and I have to do it too. I have to shift my thinking and go, oh, they don't know. And it's only new if you've never known it before, so. Other things, because I'm sure oh gosh, we did 30. Should have booked an hour, Jill. Yes.
We can keep going.
A lady had posted information. She was the head of the lifeguards at a swimming pool. And so she had a bunch of summer employees, Emily, kind of similar to what you were talking about. And she found it was really, really frustrating, especially from the young guys, that their mamas had taken care of everything for them, had made their doctor appointments, had actually filled out the job application to be a lifeguard for the summer. And she was so frustrated because these young men then did not know how to show up, even if they were there. So I think we need to emphasize that as grandparents and parents, we need to start letting the kids fail once in a while. Let them not make it to an appointment that they were supposed to have gotten to and did not put it on their own calendar, their own radar, and then had to bear the consequences of that. So she was very, very emphatic in what she was sharing, that we as adults have not trained them properly.
Penny, thank you. Very true. So again, I'm going to go back to Sarah's question. One of the things you could do is, hey, how many of you have made a doctor's appointment on your own? How many of you have such and such and such? You know, so you find out sort of what, okay, kind of fact finding to start with. Parents are going to interviews with their kids. Parents have them on Live 360 until they're and beyond being married. And I've had multiple conversations with the young people, particularly under 25. And I asked them some questions about their parents and stuff. And they're frustrated because they want to do it, but their parents can't let go. They're like, I want, and so after a while, they're just like, it's like anybody, you know, if you say, help me button my jacket, and you button my jacket for me every time, I don't need to learn how to do that. And you're correct, Leah, hold them accountable, not blame someone else. So how do we do that? Then we come back and say, I'm going to give you 3 opportunities to do this. And part of that is failing. Now, the kids can do that if you let them. They actually have more grit than we think. They're turning some of this around because they're looking at you all going, man, you guys have screwed us up. Because I've heard multiple times go, you guys did this to us and now you're mad. I'm like, I know. So it's really, and I haven't figured out what age group. I think it's the older millennials to the Xers that I just want to look and go, stop it. Like, stop. But I think we get stuck on fixing the problem. We assume that's what they want when they call, but they just want us to talk. Yes, exactly. So we have to do the work to step back and go, And I've said to my kids, I have 2 boys, they're 25 and 28, and one in particular, well, both of them at different times have called. They're both married, and when they call, I've gone to saying, what do you need from me in this conversation? Do you want me to, do you want me to fix or offer, or is it listening? And they're like, oh, Mom, just listen right now. Okay, great. So if we could just own your own spot, like pausing before you jump in. And I'm a jumper inner, like, so I've had to learn to, okay. And I've also done a lot around like what questions to ask them. And really, they love it when you're bold and just ask and say stuff that you know, instead of couching it and being all soft and politically correct and everything. I'm like, guys, you suck. Like, what is going on? Talk to me about this. And they look at me like, yeah, like that girl Denver. I'm like, something's not right. Spit it out. And then just go, okay, hold space for that. Yep, you're allowed to feel overwhelmed and cry and do all the things. Okay, great. And now you got a job to do. So how are we going to make that jump? Teach them. And yes, I get so fired up about this because it is a follow up with them. Even on a regular occasion, like I have 3 young women from Champaign that I met over the course of time. And last August, I was at a luncheon with them and I said, oh, you guys, I said, it would just be so fun to have lunch with the 3 of you. And they're like, you would do that? Like, yeah, let's do it. So when I was in Champaign, we had lunch or dinner one evening, and they all just opened up about their parent because it was not their parent. Then they drove themselves down here in over spring break and hung out at my house for 2 days. One of the girls had never driven on the interstate by herself, and they let her drive 5 hours. But she didn't tell them that till they got like an hour down the road, and they're like, you've never, and it was raining. I'm like, well, how'd that go? And they're like, well, we didn't reckon we got here. But her mom and dad were like this. And she has become, so I say that to you because we have to check ourselves too, right? And not only do we need to hold our kids accountable, but hold your friends accountable when they're having those conversations. Take off Live 360. You don't need to know where the hell they are all the time. Like, seriously, My nephew got married and his mother-in-law said, oh, when are you going to go on Life 360? He said, I am not. And you need to take her off too, because we're married and you don't need to know where we are. So it's this, we all have ownership in it. And I'm convinced it happens one conversation at a time. One small, like thinking through those things like you're doing, Emily, you know, thinking, Penny, like what you said, just be, and holding the judgment back when we realize they don't know how to make a doctor's appointment. Like instead of going, oh my God, you go, oh, look, okay. So guess what? Now it's time to learn. What do you need to be supported to do that? So other questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, situations.
You're making me look at my parenting. So thank you, Cheryl, because I have 2 college and a senior in high school. But I see that the girls are very different than my boy. Like they're spreading their wings more, and maybe because they're a little bit older, but I still like, I try to get my son to do things. And you know, I did the thing. I said, you have to go to this dentist appointment on your own. He didn't go. I had to pay $100 because he didn't show up. So,
Well, I would charge him. I'd say, you know what? You owe me $100.
Well, I forced him to get a job this summer off the farm. Okay. So
good.
Which has been interesting, but you know, I felt like he needed to see how the real world works. You know, it's great that he has a lot of skills being on the farm. I think farm kids are definitely really well-rounded because they have so many different experiences and expectations. You know, he's been driving a tractor since he was 8 years old. You know, most other kids don't have that kind of responsibility. So in many ways, I find my kids are very, very responsible and organized in that. But when it gets to the outside world, and I feel like they don't know how to.
Well, how would they know, Jill? How
right.
would they know? They haven't had that experience yet. Yeah. And your job as parents, and tell your friends this, because I run into people that I ran into a gal, her daughter was 3 years old. They put her in this ballerina dance thing or whatever, and she cried. And I said, why are you doing it? She goes, well, she likes ballerina. I said, she likes it in her house in a tutu. And she's like, I know. And I said, okay, so what have you learned? I said, will you do this next year? She goes, yeah. I said, why? She goes, well, peer pressure. I'm like, well, then that's your problem and you're messing it up. So it's our job to make them uncomfortable. It's our job to make them mad. If you've made them mad, congratulations, Jill. But right, it is just how we think about that. Even if we can just stop and think about it and make 2 different decisions than we did previously or whatever. Yeah. And anybody else?
Well, I was just going to say, I feel, and I don't know if I'm going to say this as correctly as I'm hoping to, but I feel like it is taking the younger generations longer to grow up. And I feel like you're speaking right to it. Like, I feel like for whatever, you know, for my husband and I at 21, we were doing it, and it's just taking longer, and it's okay. It's taking longer. They still need to do all the responsible things, but I feel like the generations behind us, it's just not happening as fast as
you are absolutely right, Natalie. That is true. And the research shows it. An author that I read a lot of is Tim Elmore, Dr. Tim Elmore. He's written several books, one called The Pandemic Population, and the other, and I'll give these to Jill so you can do this, Gen Z Unfiltered. And they are actually delayed 5 years from where we were. Yes. So when we were, okay, think about it. They're on your insurance till they're 26. Well, that wasn't the case before. So now it is, right? They can't afford to buy a house in the economy and have a job and move out and all the things. So you are absolutely spot on. So think about it. What we did at 21, they're not going to do till they're 27. They're 5 to 6 years delayed in the regular adult sorts of things. Now, could we go into why that's all happening? I mean, okay, yeah, we could, if you really want to help understand that so you're not so frustrated with it. But at the end of the day, they're 5 years delayed. They're getting married later, they're having kids later, they're doing different jobs later, they're, all of that, absolutely true. And sometimes I think that helps just to go, oh, I'm not crazy. Like, yes, but what can you do to prepare them maybe to move that up 2 years or 3, Yeah. Great point, Natalie. Great point.
And I feel like the job thing follows that there's not a groove for a job until later. And I find
That's
that,
correct.
yeah.
Yes.
They might have a path of jobs, rather than the job early.
Well, yes. Okay. So, oh my gosh, if you haven't listened to the podcast episode with my niece, Allie Bierman, you have to listen to that one because okay, so my family writes this year in review at Christmas and I read hers and she has an incredible job. I mean, straight out of college, she got with this firm in Nashville, ESA. She's an architectural design interior anyway. And she said, it's so good. She goes, but is it time to move on? And I'm like, Allie, she goes, well, you hear that you don't find your perfect job right out of college and it takes a couple. And she goes, I'm wondering if I did it wrong because mine is. And so do I need to? And I was like, that is the message they're hearing out there. And they also don't know. It's so different than think about it. Even 20 or 30 years ago, you had a couple of options and now, and the other thing is we've told them they can do it all. So they think they need to. And this younger generation is never going to be satisfied with one job. They're going to have a side gig. Jason Dorsey is another guy that I listened to, and he wrote a book called Z Economy. These kids are going to have a side business. They're going to have a side hustle. They're going to have a boutique. They're going to teach yoga. They're going to do something because they're not like the 60, 70-year-old farmers where that's all they've ever done and that's their whole identity. That's not them. So again, that's another piece that we're like, this is confusing to us. Yes. Slow life on a podcast. Okay. Yeah, it's true. And the pressures of they have to do it all and have a busy badge because I've been on every board and I've been on everything. And I mean, I'm the FFA this and I'm the FFA that, and I'm the ag person. I mean, it's a lot. And then at some point the crash happens. The other thing that this young group that I had in January, they said, we don't know how to just live life. I said, okay, tell me what that means. Well, you go to high school. Okay. Then you go to college. There's not a next thing. It's like, oh, I just got to live life and do my job 40 hours a week. I've never done that before. Yeah. So there's just a lot of things that are different than the other 4 generations. And when you read some of this research, it is significantly different with this group. That's why we're all kind of perplexed. So, other thoughts, questions, comments, resources?
I just wanted to say thank you for being so enlightening. Appreciate it. And you sharing today.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Reach out anytime with other questions or any way that I can be of assistance to what you're doing. So, anything else?
Thank you, Cheryl. We appreciate your time this morning.
It was fun.
So-
Help my brain get going.
Well, we hope everyone was enlightened this morning, and we will hopefully hear from you again.
Yes, please keep my information if there's ways that I can help you or, pass that along to families who are struggling with that transition. I would love the opportunity to sit with them and work with them. Given the fact that my family my extended family struggle, there's some redemption in being able to help and walk through some of those things because, you know, it's, well, land is very important and our legacy is too. So thank you for letting me be a part of this. What a joy.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.